All right, so this, of course, are the final hours before voting comes to an end in the United States of America. The counting of the votes has already begun in some places, and we will get to know as to what the picture looks like in American politics in a few hours from now. But these are some of the images of the people turning up at the polling stations. They're getting their documents verified, and then they're, of course, casting their vote. And it's been a tight race. It's been so tight that no one wants to stick their neck out and predict as to who is in the lead in this march to the White House. But as expected, there is never an election without any drama. And my colleague Siddhant Sibil is, of course, joining us from Washington, D.C. He's been tracking the developments right from the epicenter of where they are happening. Siddhant, at this moment, it has been an election that has gone on by and large very smoothly. But earlier in the day when we spoke with you, there was a man who smelt of fuel, who reportedly had a flare gun with him, who was picked up by the police at the Capitol Hill. Do we have any more information on that incident? Is that man someone who's affiliated to any political party, or any information that the police have so far given out in that incident? All right, my colleague Siddhant is in a very noisy place where the sirens just went off in the background. We'll try reconnect with him again, but this, of course, is what the scene, of course, looks like. Kamala Harris there on one side of your screen and Donald Trump on the other. And it remains to be seen as to who the American people think is the more apt candidate to, in fact, govern them for the next 4 years. Kamala Harris has put out a pretty commendable performance in terms of how she has run her campaign ever since the 25th of July, when she was appointed as the Democrat nominee to be running for the president's job after Joe Biden was nudged to step aside. Now, Donald Trump, this is his third presidential campaign. He ran in 2016. He won that election. He ran in 2020, ended up losing to Joe Biden, and this is his third campaign. And he's saying, in his words, that this is probably the best presidential campaign that he's run, and most likely will be the last one, whether he wins or loses. A lot of things are happening as we speak at this moment. The counting of votes has begun, and we'll, of course, get a much more clearer picture as things, of course, begin to shape up in this election, which is going right down to the wire. 270 electoral college seats. That is what is needed to become the president of the United States of America. And the American political system is pretty complicated. You could win the popular vote, but you could still end up losing an election. That has happened. That happened with Hillary Clinton in 2016, where she managed to win more number of votes than Donald Trump. But in the race of the electoral college votes, she ended up coming in second. And remember, the margins are very, very small. In 2020, the margin with which Joe Biden won was extremely slender, and it now remains to be seen as to what the margin will be. And meanwhile, we are getting some news alert where AP has officially called the race in 3 states. The Republican Party has won Indiana and Kentucky, and the Democrat camp has managed to keep Vermont. And Donald Trump is said to be leading in the battleground state of Georgia and Florida. That's going to be very, very interesting. This is the latest bit of information that has come in. Associated Press has officially called the race in 3 states. The Republican Party has won in Indiana and Kentucky, and the Democrat camp has managed to keep Vermont. Now, these are their strongholds, but this is where it is getting interesting. The battleground state of Georgia is reportedly leaning more towards the Republicans. We still don't have a final clearer picture, but this is the initial results that are coming in on the basis of the counting of votes that is currently underway there.
Their arms around our family. And
all right, my colleague Siddhant Sibil, I am told we have him back on the line. Siddhant, good evening to you. It's been a long day of covering the events that are unfolding there. What are you picking up at your end in Washington, D.C.?
Well, Mohammed, I'm standing exactly in front of the White House, and there is a lot of festivities which are now starting. It is almost 7 o'clock here, but it's going to be a long night here. But first, let me give you a brief vibe, to use the phrase, of the location where I'm standing. So there you can see the White House, and there are a lot of festivities happening, but you can see the fences. It's dark, maybe you're not able to see the fences, but the fences have been put up to make sure that in case there is post-poll violence, it can be stopped. It's a very regulated area where I'm standing, and there are a lot of people as well, but I do believe that the crowd is only going to grow as the night passes, given the fact that this is a night of a lot of political action. From where I am standing, just almost 20 minutes from here, is the Harvard University, where Kamala Harris will be present and will be making her statement as well. A lot of people are going there as well, and essentially to hear what she has to say when the results will be out. Right now, of course, initial indications have come of a Trump lead, but this is too initial to say what is the final figure. It will take some time. I believe
Absolutely.
almost 12 hours minimum that it will take to get a final word as to who is leading this very a race which is almost neck to neck, and that is why it will take some time. Last time in 2020, it took almost 5 days. Will it take 5 days? Only time will tell.
Absolutely, indeed, Siddhant. And this is a night that the Americans are not going to sleep. It is 10 minutes past 7 in Washington, D.C., where you are. And it's a race that has now actually just begun. It is the moment of truth for the political class in the United States of America. This is the moment when we get to know as to which way the cookie, of course, crumbles. And Siddhant, earlier in the morning, there were some reports of some, hoax bomb threats that came through. There was also this man who was arrested from in front of the Capitol. Are those things all the thing of the past, and now the focus has now completely shifted to the counting of votes that is now underway?
Well, Mohammed, it has been a pretty long day. I'll come to your question, answering it. But again, let me just give you the view of the ground, because this is a historic night indeed. And standing in front of the White House is witnessing history itself. So essentially, this is the view of the White House, and a lot of people are celebrating. And I believe the celebrations will get bigger and bigger with each passing hour. But of course, coming to your question, yes, there is an increased worry at the Capitol Hill, where WION was present earlier in the day. There was an incident as well, but it doesn't look like to be a major incident. They were able to stop the person, but what the motive, who was the person, his identity is not revealed so far. But yes, Capitol Hill, White House, the Treasury Department, all these important buildings across the city have been barricaded with iron fencing, and that shows the situation on the ground, which is quite a situation that is of increased security presence, and the authorities not taking any chances. Everyone remembers January 2021, and this is something that has led to lessons being learned when it comes to authorities, and that is why this time around it is full-proof security on the ground here in Washington.
Absolutely, indeed, Siddhant. Thank you very much indeed for joining us from Washington, D.C. and getting us all those updates. We'll, of course, come back to you as the story unfolds through the night in the United States of America. This is a night that people in the United States will not sleep. And every moment as we go along, there are updates that are coming in. The Georgia battleground state, which we just reported, where Donald Trump reportedly was in the lead. Apparently, now the information that is coming in is that Donald Trump is no longer leading in Georgia. Instead, it is Kamala Harris who seems to have taken the lead in the battleground state of Georgia. These are very early trends. A lot can change. A lot will, of course, change. And it remains to be seen as to how long it'll be before a clear picture, of course, emerges. This, of course, is the input that has just come in, where Kamala Harris is reportedly leading in the battleground state of Georgia. Remember, these are some very important moments, and it remains to be seen as to how things, of course, go. These are very first projections that are coming up in terms of how things are panning out for the two candidates. And it'll be very interesting to see as to how things, of course, go along. But this is where things really get interesting. And we need to wait and watch out for as to how each of the candidates, of course, fares in those 7 battleground states. This is the big moment. And those 7 battleground states is where the crucial battle will be fought. And we will get to know as to who has won this election through what happens in those 7 battleground states. And it is being said that the road to the White House passes through Philadelphia. At this moment, according to many of the agencies, this is what is being said, that Donald Trump has, of course, won 2 of the states, and Georgia, Kamala Harris, is the one who is, of course, leading them. All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what, of course, is to unfold here in American politics, we're being joined by Ms. Faith Pino, who's a national political reporter for the Los Angeles Times. She's joining us from Phoenix in Arizona. Ms. Faith Pino, thank you very much indeed for taking time out and speaking to us here in WION. And let me in fact start off by asking you this. The counting of the votes has begun and slowly the results are beginning to trickle in. It is still very early before anything can in fact be conclusively said as to who has the lead. But in your assessment at this moment, when you expect to have a clearer picture of who is likely to be in the White House?
We really won't have a good idea of this until much later in the evening. Where I am in Arizona, the polls haven't even closed yet, and it's expected to take several days for the count to end here. Later tonight, we should have a better sense of where some of these key swing states on the East Coast are. That's North Carolina and Georgia. And then later on the night, we might have Michigan and Wisconsin. Pennsylvania is expected to take some time because they have a bit of a complicated counting process when it comes to the early mail-in ballots. So several hours yet, as you said a moment ago, we're not expecting to sleep very much tonight.
Right, this is a night that no one in America would, of course, be sleeping. People would be glued to their television sets if they are at home, or if there are political workers or involved in the process of the election, they, of course, would be hard at work. Now, talk to us a bit about these 7 battleground states. America has 50 states, but these 7 states, of course, stand out. Why is it that these states have a tradition or a history, so to speak, of being flipped around, and depending on which way they flip, that results in the choice of the president between the two political parties? Why is it that these 7 battleground states are different from the other states?
So, in most of the states, right, there is a pretty clear majority of one party over the other, Republicans or Democrats. Voters as well. These states, as you said, flipping two elections.
We seem to have a audio issue with you, Ms. Pino. We'll try fix that. My colleagues will try fix that, and then we'll come back to you on this. But this, of course, is what is unfolding at this moment in terms of the results that are beginning to come in, where Trump is reported to have won Indiana. He's also reported to have won Kentucky. Kamala Harris has now taken a lead in Georgia, and I'm told that we've got Ms. Faith Pino back on the line with us. So, Ms. Pino, we were talking about these battleground states, and it's to have it is the voters in these states who will effectively determine, who the president of the United States of America is. Tell us, let's talk about Pennsylvania. It's something that's being said over and over again, that the road to the White House passes through Pennsylvania. And since 2004, anyone who's won Pennsylvania has managed to go on and win the presidential election. This time round, do you think Kamala Harris can do what Joe Biden did in 2020, and that is to win the state of Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I mean, that is the big question. Pennsylvania is one of the swing states, and it has the most electors of the swing states. So that means that, to win the presidency, they have to get 270 electoral votes. That's a majority of the electoral votes across the nation. And it's this kind of complicated process of counting states and the majority of states that they can get, right, to win. So Pennsylvania has the most of the swing states, and both candidates have been spending a lot of time there in the last few weeks. Kamala Harris ended her campaign rallies there last night with two rallies, one in Pittsburgh and one in Reading. And she spent all day there yesterday actually talking to voters. She even went door knocking and surprised a voter by showing up at the door. So, they're spending a significant time there because whoever wins Pennsylvania, as you said, it makes the path to winning the presidency a whole lot easier. And so Trump hasn't done himself any favors in the last week. Your viewers might have heard of his Madison Square Garden appearance earlier this week, where a comedian referred to Puerto Rico as a floating island of garbage. Democrats really seized on that comment and made a big deal out of it because there is a sizable Puerto Rican population in Pennsylvania. And in a swing state and in a place like Pennsylvania, any niche demographic matters a lot because it could take just a handful of votes to push them over the edge. And since there's a sizable Puerto Rican population in Pennsylvania, the Harris campaign is hoping that Trump's comment will have offended enough of them to vote for Harris instead.
And also, in the city of Philadelphia, where Donald Trump has pointed out to very high voter turnout, and therefore he's claiming that there must be some massive cheating that has happened. But this, of course, has been rubbished by the officials. What's your reading on what is happening in Philadelphia at the moment and the allegations leveled by Donald Trump?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't heard yet any credible reports of cheating in Philadelphia or really anywhere across the country. I've been monitoring some of these threats throughout the day, and really overall election officials are saying that voting is going very smoothly. Small things happen here and there, but usually not enough to swing, an entire election. And so what we're seeing with a comment like that builds on things that the Trump campaign has already been doing throughout the week to sort of sow distrust in the results of the election, which is sort of a blueprint for what he did in 2020.
Earlier today when Donald Trump voted in Florida and he was asked this question, will he concede defeat if he were to be defeated in the polls? And he said yes, provided the elections are fair. But now he's come out and made this allegation that there is massive cheating that has happened in Philadelphia. Are we to read that Donald Trump, we still do not know if he ends up losing, but if he were to end up losing, he'll turn around and say there was cheating that happened?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we don't know, right? But certainly that is sort of the groundwork that it seems to be laid here. And he did this, in the last two elections as well, saying that it needed to be a fair election in order for him to accept the results. And the fact is they were fair elections the last two times. He won one of them and he lost the next one. So we're not expecting to see any massive cheating or any kind of, election overthrow. Again, as I said, things have gone very smoothly today, and a lot of Americans have already voted in early voting and have already had their votes either counted or, reported as accepted so that they can start being counted today, depending on the state's election laws. So, we're seeing so far a free and fair election, but he has a history of not accepting the results. So we'll see what he does this time.
And also just to go back to the point that you were making where the Democrats have gone around knocking on the doors of the people, asking them, have you voted? If not, why don't you come and vote? To try and get their supporters to come, in the last moments, to try and get every single person to the polling booth and to get their votes. The Republicans are turning around and saying that, listen, this is what points to a certain sense of unease that the Democrats may have, that probably not enough of their supporters have been turning out to vote. What's your reading into this?
Yeah, I don't know that there's credibility to that. I think this is something that happens in every election, is that both parties, try to turn out every last vote to the last minute. And I've been to Democratic events and Republican events here in Arizona, which is another swing state, in the last few days. And, that is the singular message that both parties are pushing is we need to turn out every last vote because both parties are looking to target these low propensity voters, as they're called, which are voters who may not have voted in the last election or haven't voted in the last couple of elections, but who would lean towards their party. And both parties, since this is such a tight margin, are focusing on getting those low propensity voters to turn out, show up, cast their ballots so that their side wins. So I don't know that it's really much larger on one side versus another. I think both parties are really trying to push the turnout.
Right, and also tell us a bit about this campaign that has played out. At this moment, Donald Trump, in his opinion, he said that the biggest issues for which the people of America would vote are illegal immigration and the question of economy. On the other hand, if you look at what Kamala Harris has been speaking about, she's effectively spoken about the issue of abortion and the issue of protecting the American democracy. Now, in your assessment, what do you think has more traction with the people within the United States of America? Because Donald Trump has gone to town saying that, listen, inflation was a problem that was created by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I mean, the economy is always number one for voters, right? That's a pretty reliable rule of thumb that we can depend on, is no matter what party you are, people care where their money is going and how much money they have, right? So for both parties, the economy is top of mind. Trump has this argument that the economy was much better under his watch, and that inflation has gotten out of control under the Biden-Harris administration. And, for Harris's part, she says that she inherited a mess. She and Biden inherited a mess when they came into office because the COVID-19 pandemic was still underway, and they were having to re-stimulate the economy and continue carrying out, giving, stimulus checks to the American people. And so she has acknowledged that the economy is a central issue to voters and that they really feel where their pocketbooks are hurting. And she has tried to make it central part of her campaign as well. But to your point, abortion is really her stump issue and immigration is really his.
Absolutely, indeed. And you're joining us from Arizona. Give us a sense of what the mood is like in Arizona. Which way do you think Arizona is likely to tilt this time around?
So the mood is very energized. I just came back from a polling place at Arizona State University where there was a lot of students there milling about. Many had already cast their votes. There were lots of signs and pizza and things like this to entice students to cast their votes. Arizona is trending slightly more in Trump's direction, according to polls the last couple of months, but it's still within the margin of error, so it's going to be tight. And Arizona did take several days to finish counting their ballots in 2020, and we can expect to see it take some time this year as well. The Arizona Secretary of State, who's in charge of votes and counting the votes, said that the official counts will not be done for probably 10 to 13 days. Although media projections of who wins might happen before that. So, it's going to be tight here, but people are energetic. There's signs everywhere you look. You just can't escape the fact that the election is today.
Absolutely, indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Faith Pena, for joining us and getting us that perspective. This, of course, is a cracker of an election. We're down to the business end of things. The counting of votes is currently underway, and a couple of states have also been called. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.